Hi, I'm Cameron. I just read comics. I love them. And welcome back to another episode of Cameron Reads Comics. On today's episode, I'm going to be talking about Dark Spaces, Wildfire by Scott Snyder and Hayden Sherman. This story collects Dark Spaces, Wildfire, issues number 1 through 5. Dark Spaces is Scott Snyder's grounded horror line, and he wrote 2 stories within this imprint. Dark Spaces is a label within the IDW publishing umbrella, and for everyone's understanding, we can just basically call the story Wildfire. It's just under the Dark Spaces umbrella. This is an indie comic published by IDW, so you don't need to know anything about any of these characters before you read it. You kind of just need to hop right in. For the story, this story is about female inmates that work in a firefighting program for money, and I think time off of their sentence. I don't know if that's true or not. They're led by an officer named Ma, who's trying to show these women that if they focus on the work and make progress, they'll be rewarded, just as a principle throughout their entire lives. Ma's goal is reformation of these women's lives. They don't need to be seen as prisoners. They can be people in society. And the girls really love that about Ma. They really respect that about her. During what's called the Arroyo Fire, they have a new member on their troop who is in prison for a white-collar crime. During this Arroyo Fire, she tells the girl that where they're fighting the fire is close to a mansion with a lot of stuff in it, a lot of valuable possessions that they can get money for. So, against their better judgment, the girls go in to this mansion as if they're fighting off a fire, but really they're looting the place. But it all hits the fan when they find 4 dead bodies. I think the really cool part about this story is the way that it's written. There's 5 issues in it, but each issue has the theme of the 5 stages of a fire that they explore at the top of the story. There is the trap, the ignition, the flashover, max heat, and the decay. These are explored like the plot structure, and it's a really fascinating way to tell the storytelling. Basically, I'm not going to tell you what happens after they find these dead bodies in this house, but it's crazy. Twists and turns. I kind of consider this story and something like Dark Spaces Dungeon to go hand in hand. I wouldn't quite make them the same. I think if you want to check out more, especially with what's going on in DC right now, look at those 2 books, because I think that they really kind of like show you who you're working with. Now for the art. Hayden Sherman is on the art, and when I look at this art, I don't think it's Hayden Sherman. It doesn't feel like Hayden Sherman's current art on something like Absolute Wonder Woman, or even the last story I read, Dark Spaces Dungeon. It's so different than the style I currently picture him having, but it's still really great. Every character looks very specific, and I just think that this guy, Hayden Sherman, understands panel layouts better than like anyone currently working. I think he's absolutely crushing it. The way that he does this, it's absolutely gorgeous. He does it better than anyone else. It just shows great understanding and creativity. We always have to remember comics are a visual medium, and I think that Hayden Sherman understands the assignment. Rhonda Pattinson does the colors, and she does a great job in this book using alternative colors for splash pages. You know, if you want something more traditional and like darker, I would look at Dark Spaces Dungeon, but the colors in this one are really interesting. I think fire was a theme that like influenced the color palette very, very much. Think of it like the original coloring for Batman the Killing Joke, and then like the Brian Boland redoing the colors for Batman the Killing Joke. Like that's kind of like what the colors are doing in this book that I thought was really interesting. Now for how I liked it. In my opinion, it doesn't lend itself to a horror comic as much as it does like a heist book. Dungeon had me on the edge of my seat. It was like a freaking thriller, and it terrified me. The story doesn't terrify me as much. It's just kind of like, what are we going to do? We're going to break into this thing. There's surprises in this book, but not scares, in my opinion. I love how Scott Snyder writes a twist ending. The story had a great trajectory, and then he tweaked one thing and it changed the entire story. I look at the whole thing differently. And he did that in Dungeon too, and I just really appreciate it. So for my rating, I'm going to give this story a 7.1 out of 10. I thought it was good. I think it's worth checking out with everything going on in DC right now. I think if you need a one-off horror book or a heist book, go check out Dark Spaces Wildfire. Leave a comment. Tell me what you thought. My name's Cameron. I'll just read comics. I love them. I'll see you guys next time.